Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you doing today?
Good. I've been off for a while. Have to go back to work. So right into the federal election and the endless COVID saga. So here we go again. Bruce, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, all things considered. I mean, there's lots of chaos out there these days, and you mentioned two of the reasons. Life goes on, but seems to be getting to be more of a struggle some days.
A lot less chaos if you just stay off Twitter, I notice.
Yeah, I've been doing more of that. I'm becoming more recalcitrant as I'm getting older.
I have too. I'm just thinking about being on there now and then, but kind of backing away from it considerably. It just seems to be a stress amplifier. So, and you start to question how useful it is. Alrighty. Most people aren't on Twitter, so they don't even know what we're talking about. They're smarter than us. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're continuing on with our prospect series, and we're going to be looking at three players: Dmitry Samorukov, Ryan McLeod, and Xavier Bourgault. One of the few players drafted high from the Quebec League not named Zachary. There's all these guys called Zachary. Big name in Quebec, I guess, 20 years or 18 years ago. Bruce will also, there's really nothing to talk about in terms of the Oilers, is there? There's nothing.
Not a lot going on, David.
It's coming soon.
Yeah, they had to stuff they basically had to take their 2 months vacation in a month. So they're vacationing pretty hard right now, I think, and as they should, realistically, it's only us ink-stained wretches that have to work 12 months of the year, right?
Well, and the players themselves have been off for a little bit more than a month. Of course, they're working. They're
Oh yeah.
It's not like the old days where you sit on the deck, the dock of the bay and drink beer in the NHL. Like, these guys work like crazy, and they watch their diets, and it's a science right now in terms of getting ready for the season. All right, Bruce. We'll talk a little bit about. We will start though with a couple of pieces of news. Jesperi Kotkaniemi's offer sheet, which some people, including Jack Todd of Montreal Gazette, I don't know if you read his column, but he was really upset about the offer sheet.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't get why people are upset by offer sheets. I just think the weird thing about offer sheets is why they're not more common. But it's completely within the rules. I don't know. I can't speak to Kotkaniemi's value as a player. I like it's an interesting thing to make an offer sheet on a guy for just 1 year, not sign him to a longer contract, because you're giving up a first and a third. You're renting him for a year, because then he's free to go elsewhere.
Well, he isn't. I mean, you have RFA rights, but his qualifying offer is $6.1 million now, which is an awful lot for a guy that's proven as little as Kotkaniemi has to this point. But the talk is, scuttlebutt is that he and the Canes have already pre-agreed to a long-term extension next year at a lower figure, of course, which would be illegal, which isn't to say it hasn't happened, because things have been known to happen in the NHL that weren't entirely above the boards. But Montreal was in cap hell, and they just thought if we give them this offer, they might not be able to compete with it, or we can really hurt them. And I think what they really want to do is hurt Montreal, because Montreal signed Sebastian Aho to an offer sheet 2 years ago. So this is very much a revenge. That was very, very clear in the tweets that they put out, and in the bonus structure. Like, his salary is $6,100,015, and Kotkaniemi is number 15, with a signing bonus of, get this, $20. Sebastian Aho is number 20. Like, if you don't think there's a message in there, then you don't know numerology.
Yeah, there's some pretty good signs there, isn't there? I hadn't known that.
And they
Listen, if
tweeted the exact same words as Montreal did when they signed
okay.
Aho. They put out a tweet in French with the same words that Montreal from Carolina. They had a tweet in French. They talked about an offer sheet. You know what a offer sheet is in French? Is offer hostile offer, which is a way better word than offer sheet to begin with.
Oh,
So
hostile.
they made a hostile takeover of Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and it was there was a more than a little cynical fun being had by Carolina at Montreal's expense, and it's going to make for an interesting rivalry if nothing else as time goes forward.
Well, to the extent that the move was a revenge move, it's a mistake.
Mhm.
They might be just having fun with that, playing with that. But if they really don't think Kotkaniemi is a good player, I guess it's like they get Bob Stauffer was mentioning on Oilers Now, like they get league money, right, to keep operating in Carolina. Like maybe it's just kind of free money, someone else's money they're throwing around, like Montreal's money. But listen, cap space is currency in the NHL, and if they don't really
Is it
think this
ever?
is a good player and he's not worth that somehow into the long term, this is a really bad decision on Carolina's part. But if they think he's a good player, then that this makes sense. I can't read their minds, but they do get those are some pretty interesting little smoke signals they send out there that do speak to like hostility. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Apparently the owner Tom Dundun is it? He was not very impressed by the offer sheet, and I don't know what it is about the NHL, but they. I mean, you remember Brian Burke challenging
Oh, I
uh,
know.
Kevin
Low to a
Lowe to a
fight.
barn fight, and there was a revenge offer sheet for Ryan Kessler from when Philadelphia and Vancouver made each offer sheeted a player off the other team. They each hurt the other team when they had to match, and they had to pay the guy more than they wanted to pay him, right? And it was uh, and it's been such a team's been so reluctant to use it. You know how many successful offer sheets there have been so far in the 21st century, which is now 21 years old?
One,
One,
but
one.
Dustin Penner.
Dustin Penn, the one and only that actually got signed and went to the team that signed him. All the others got matched, and a whole lot of them got matched with major bitter feelings.
Well, Montreal spent a lot of cash last year, right, building that team, and it paid off. They got to the Stanley Cup
Yep.
final, so I hope it was worth it. Not a big Habs fan, so maybe if I was more of a Habs fan, I'd be more upset about this. But I'm not. It is what it is. It's within the rules. Presumably Carolina isn't run by dummies. They know what they're doing, and they think they're getting a good player at a price they can afford. So
They've got a mitt full of good Finns there in Carolina. They got Aho, of course, and Toivu Teravainen, who they got from Chicago in a salary cap
oh, that was a
related
good
transaction.
deal.
That was a steal.
Was that the
And
Bickell? Was that related to Brian
Brian
McKell?
Bickle, yeah, yeah. They picked the
Bickle?
last year Brian Bickle's contract, and Chicago threw in Toivu Teravainen, who's done nothing but fill the net for Carolina ever since. And so anyway, they got some talent there, and Kotkaniemi, I mean, he's a good young player, but he's got miles to go. But
Is he a
it's
better
an
player than
interesting bet.
is he a better player than Kyler Yamamoto? It's hard to know. He's a center. He's a big center, right? So he has more
Yeah,
potential. Like he's, they still. There's always that hope with the big centers that they're going to become something, even when they're kind of trending sideways a little bit. Bruce,
sure did more in the playoffs than Kari Yamamoto. I'll say that.
yeah, Corey Pronman of the Athletic came out
Hmm.
with his ranking. He's ranking the NHL's prospects team by team, and the Oilers finished 25 out of 32 teams, I guess. 25 out of 32
Yep.
teams. Not exactly
Seattle
that
number
high.
32.
Not exactly that high. It's every player under the age of 22. Um, Corey Pronman, he's a hardworking guy and a
Hmm.
valuable resource for describing the play
Yep.
of amateur players. I was a little shocked though at a couple of his evaluations of Edmonton Oilers prospects. So he had Evan Bouchard as the third best prospect on the team.
Yep.
behind Yamamoto, Kyler Yamamoto, and Dylan Holloway. I would probably have Bouchard first,
Mm-hmm.
including Yamamoto on that list. I think I wouldn't
Right.
trade Kyler Yamamoto for Evan Bouchard. So, um, but he rated Evan Bouchard's puck skills as below average by NHL standards. So below average NHL puck skills.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce, we were talking about this
We don't see it.
before. Could be like we were thinking, is this a typo?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Is um
I mean,
he
there
he
is a typo
likes
right above it. It says skating below average, not below, blow. That's when his skating blows. And
maybe
and
that's a
that
different
one I can at
category.
least sort of say skating below average. Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
I can
fair
say that.
enough.
But puck skills below average, hockey sense above average, compete average, shot above average. That's his five categories. So he had two above and two below for Bouchard. But the comment said, I mean, you think of this puck skills below average, and the comment says there's no doubt he can make a lot happen offensively. His vision from both ends of the ice is great. He can hit seams and make a lot of outlets effectively and be creative with the puck. And then he gets into his shot and other stuff. And Then he brings up questions about the skating, but I don't see anything in the commentary that supports below average. And I think too much of Corey Pronman to think that he sees that as a below average skill in Evan Bouchard. Like that's what he's got. That's his game in spades is what he can do when he's got the puck on the stick. And I think it's a typo. I honestly do.
I think that that's probably the soundest the soundest because there's no way that Evan Bouchard is below average with the puck
Mhm.
by the NHL standards. He's not average. He's above average. If he gets a regular shift with the Oilers, he will be their best defenseman, shooting, moving. I mean, he has a different category for
Puck.
shooting, but just
Yeah.
retrieving getting the puck on a stick, holding the puck, making the right play, walking the line, stick handling the puck, moving the puck. He will be better than Darnell Nurse, I believe, and Tyson Barrie, who are probably going to be their two best guys this coming year. He'll be better than either of them. He's just gifted, I think, moving the puck. So yeah, we'll go with typo. The other one that I quibbled with, he had and this is less of a quibble. He had Dylan Holloway as an average skater. And so I watched him both at the World Junior Championships, Dylan Holloway, and in 4, 5, 6 games in college hockey. He was a little banged up and wasn't great with the puck at the World Junior, but he was moving pretty fast. But Bruce, when he got back to college this year, that guy's a rocket. Like
Mhm.
he moves. He is a fast skater. So I'm not hockey skating average. There's a quibble there. I'm gonna say he's above average. And that's what's if he's going to get in the NHL and stay there, it's going to be that skating and his size and his hitting. Plus, he can move the puck a bit.
Well, what I see in this skating department, I mean, this is quibbling maybe a little bit, but he makes a beeline for the puck, which is great. Like that's an awesome thing for him to have. I love that aspect of his game. Uh, and is is he and he wins pucks. So he says skating average, compete above average. Well, between the two of them, you're going to win some puck battles. But and he does say average, meaning NHL average. It's not that modern pejorative term. Average meaning not good enough.
Yeah,
He's up to NHL standard for skating. I see him as a little bit better, but I have much less of a quibble than with that than the one on Evan Bouchard, which I thought was too like he from below average to above average is a double jump, which is that more of a to me an error. This one, I'd like to think that he's erred on the side of caution, and he would be above average. Not elite, maybe I mean, objectively, that's what you want. I mean, his top mark is elite, and we didn't see any of that on any of the Oilers in any skill.
yeah. I'm just looking up what Corey had for. Oh, here we go. Where he ranked this particular player, Holloway, in the draft. Just Google Holloway on my list. So he in that draft he had him 22nd overall.
Right, and he went quick.
So he had him on the lower end.
Mm.
Some people had him as Sam Cosentino had Holloway ranked 9th. That was the highest that Holloway was ranked. I think in a redraft, Bruce,
Mm.
Holloway would go 2 or 3 points draft
Ahead.
places higher than he went right now.
And
So
again, here's the short verbal. Holloway had an excellent season as one of the best forwards in college hockey and a leading player on a top team. He's a well-rounded hockey player. He skates and competes well. He has high skill level. He can make plays and score goals at a quick pace. He won't be the most dangerous player with the puck on the stick on an NHL line, but he can drive play while also being a physical player off the puck. I see a projected top 6 forward in the NHL. I mean, that's pretty positive commentary.
correct.
So,
And he says he skates well. So like his average is average NHL, which is really really damn good. Like it's a by Western Hockey League or college or AHL standards, that's really strong skating, just comparing him to other NHLers. But that said, I do think he's probably, from what I've seen, maybe I just watched the Oilers too much and Alex Chiasson and Zach Cass. Well, Zach Kassian can skate a bit, but maybe I've seen too many slow skaters over the years. But I have also seen Connor McDavid, and I'm not saying that
oh, no, that's a
Dylan
reach.
Holloway's that fast, but Dylan Holloway is in the race, right? Like for the next fastest forward on the Oilers, I think he'd be in the race, honestly. Like that guy flies. So,
Well, now that the immortal Joachim Nygaard is headed back to Sweden
yes.
after having beaten Connor McDavid in the fastest skater competition at the skills contest that one year. Mind you, that was the year McDavid was coming off the knee thing. Uh, but yeah, the team speed is going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. You remember that Holland brought in guys like Nygaard, Gaetan Haas, and Tyler Ennis, among others, to address that. And some of those burners he brought in aren't there, so some of those replacements are going to need to burn a little bit. So that may be his window into the team is his fast and I would call it aggressive skating.
Yeah, we'll have to see how fast. Like Hyman, I don't think is known as a fast skater. What about Warren Fogle? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's
Ryan's
what we're
known as
going to
a
have to watch.
fast. Ryan's kind of fast, isn't he? Like he's known for his skating, I
Yeah,
believe.
he's quick. He's quick, and of course, the other Ryan that we're going to talk about here in a bit, McLeod, he's pretty quick too, and he's a relative newcomer to the team. So, he's going to address to some extent that team speed thing.
Why don't we start with Ryan McLeod, Bruce? Do you want to introduce this player?
Yeah, he was a pick in 2018, second round, right after Philip Broberg. Sorry, no, right after Evan Bouchard. It was Chiarelli's last year as GM, and Keith Gretzky. 40th overall, so an early pick on the Saturday. A big forward, fast, late birthday from Ontario. And so he and the Oilers, for whatever reason, they've taken a lot of late birthdays with their, especially their forwards. Their top forward, 5 years in a row, has been a late birthday, which means they're the oldest guys in their draft class. But they also turn pro when they're the youngest because they only have one more year of junior left, and not the two that sort of the regular birthday guys have. So he already was turning pro in his draft plus 2 season, and uh, he had kind of a weak first year in Bakersfield, and then this year his draft plus 3 season and his second pro year, he went overseas, of course, during the COVID lockout. Posted pretty decent numbers over there, and then came back to the AHL and lit it up. And he was terrific on a very high-powered line with Tyler Benson and Cooper Marody, point a game, half goals, half assists. Like he was putting the puck in the net himself, and he was the one guy on the entire team in Bakersfield that got called up to the Oilers during the season, and actually got into NHL games. And they put him in and they left him in. He played all the way through the end of the regular season and the playoffs. In the center position in the bottom 6, and he survived in the NHL. I wouldn't say he lit it up. He didn't score. He wasn't really an offensive threat at all, and that's something that he's going to have to rediscover that he had in the AHL as a modicum of scoring.
He out of junior, he was kind of I don't know if the word's maybe they expected a bit more of this player offensively in major junior hockey. He's kind of a point a game guy in his draft year. So, he's so big, so fast, and he's got some skill. But in the AHL, he really did take a step up as a scorer. Now, that could be in part related to playing with two great AHL attackers in Tyler Benson and Cooper Marody, who yet to be seen if they can become, solid NHL attackers, or if any of them can. But because McLeod's the youngest, the biggest, and the fastest, he's getting the hardest. He's seen as the best prospect. I was pleasantly surprised by his play in Edmonton. In Switzerland, I noticed that he was still having defensive problems, losing guys in the slot, and now and then. I mean, on that big ice surface, he was just fantastic with the puck. He was just flying down the wing, and he's made for the European game, that's for sure. But I was surprised at his AHL production, and happily surprised. That was fantastic to see that kind of a improvement from him on the attack. I don't know in the NHL what kind of attacker we're going to see, or even if he's going to play the center. We'll have to see how he does on faceoffs. But what I was worried about is that he would not hold his own defensively, and he did. I thought he was generally making the right reads and defensively responsible, and that's just an absolute must for this player if he's going to be an NHL center. He's going to have to do it on defensive play, and if he makes his mind up to do that with his size, speed, he should be able to get it done. There's nothing stopping him. So maybe Jay Woodcroft is known as a really good coach down there. He's had a couple years with this player, and maybe that was something that clicked for McLeod this season, because he does have a chance to be the fourth line center on the Oilers this year, or the third line center. There's McDavid and Draisaitl, and then Derek Ryan, and McLeod. There's Devon Shore. I don't really think they like Devon Shore as a center, or that Devon Shore is a very good center. He's not strong enough defensively, like in terms of the defensive reads. He's just too reactive. So McLeod has this chance to grab that fourth line center job that Jujhar Khaira had for a number of years. It's funny. I was just thinking of Khaira, I was like, and where are we going to miss him? And I just thought,
I am.
I thought I'm not, because he didn't make big play. Like, he just really in the end didn't come through in the playoffs. Those are the players that I miss when they're gone. And he had a couple chances. So maybe he'll be great, but it's not to think that he couldn't, score a couple big goals in his next stop in the playoffs and kind of be that guy. Maybe he will in the future, but maybe it has to do with bad puck luck or something. Maybe he had his chances, but Khaira in the end just never got it done. Helped them win in the playoffs, which is the ultimate way I rate a hockey player.
Well, then you can rate a lot of Oilers poorly, David.
Oh, for sure, Bruce. For sure.
Khaira, he scored the goal in Game 3 that put Edmonton ahead 4-1. It should have put that game to bed, and didn't. Failure in the playoffs is, it's rare and usually incorrect to point the finger at one or two players. And I know that's not
no, I would point it at a lot of guys.
That's not what you're doing, but he's got game, and I thought he was really starting to bring it. I think Chicago could get a real steal out of him for the next 2 years at a decent price. They'll get value out of him. But
I think that's a real possibility too, Bruce. And I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying I'm not going to I'm not thinking I'm going to miss his play. And I'd rather see them go with Derek Ryan and Ryan McLeod at this point. Like if where it is right
Ryan
now.
McLeod, our bottom six center.
Yeah.
He played in 3 different leagues last year in 3 different countries, McLeod, and he played double-digit games in each one. That wasn't easily done with the chaos that was scheduled last year. But between Zug, Bakersfield, Edmonton, 15, 28, 10 games respectively, and then the 4 in the playoffs for the Oilers. So that was a huge developmental year for the guy. Like, we had to push him up our rankings based on just how far ahead he pushed his game from before. He's starting to realize some of his promise.
Well, think of where he was after his first year in Bakersfield, where he really didn't have that auspicious a debut. It's pretty clear they liked him. Like they gave him some special teams play even in that first season, but they're liking him, and he's given them every reason to like him. So good for Ryan McLeod. Bruce, let's move on to Xavier Bourgault. And I'm going to be writing about him. And I've been digging into NHL equivalencies, which is they look at how the player did in his league, and then they try to say how he would do in the NHL based on that last year's scoring in the league. And it's typically used with players in their draft years coming out of major junior hockey. So I've looked at every Oiler player drafted in the first round and some in the second round as well in the last 20 years. So the best NHLE, to put it in perspective, like to give you some idea of how these numbers work, Connor McDavid is a junior player, played 67 games, 169 points, 2.52 points per game in his last year of junior. And I add both playoff and regular season together when I do it because I like to get the bigger sample size. Yep. And so his NHL equivalency is 67 points. That's what was expected of him
as a 17-year-old.
Yeah. Is it for the same year as are they projecting him into the next year, or are they saying if he had played that year in the NHL? I guess they're saying if they had played that year in the NHL. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. So if he had, as a 17-year-old, if he had played in the NHL, he would have got 67 points. That's the idea. So right. That is about right. And the worst was Mitch Moroz, second round pick in 2012, 32nd overall, Bruce. He had in 86 games, he had 33 points, and his NHL equivalency would have been 10 points. So that's the range. So I'll just read a few of the equivalencies. Taylor Hall's 49, Nail Yakupov 41, Kailer Yamamoto 38, Tyler Ennis 31, Rob Schremp 30, Raphael Lavoie 29, Ryan McLeod 27, Tyler Benson 23, Jeff Jacques 11. And Bourgault in 34 games, he had 44 points, regular season and playoffs this year in the Q. His NHLE is 30. So he's right in the range of Tyler Ennis, Gilbert Brule, Rob Schremp, Raphael Lavoie, Brendan Perlini. And then there's two players, David Perron and Jordan Eberle, who have NHLEs of 27. So it's not an exact science in predicting the future, obviously, Bruce, because we have this group of players and some of them were total busts as NHL players. And then we have Perron and Eberle, who are actually a little below in terms of NHLE and have become top six wingers, top line wingers at times in the NHL. So with Bourgault, that's kind of where we're at. I don't know how helpful that is in the end in terms of assessing him. But Bruce, there's one other interesting fact. Because so few players played in major junior hockey this year, there's only, in the first round, there was only 5 forwards who had NHLEs drafted this year. And the best was Dylan Guenther of the Oil Kings, who has an NHLE of 50 points. He had 2 points a game in his 12 games with the Oil Kings. But the second best forward taken in this year's draft for NHLE, if you're just looking at the major junior leagues, is Xavier Bourgault. So he wasn't a reach when he was drafted. People who believe in NHLE and go by the numbers tended to have Xavier Bourgault rated more highly than other people. And when you look at the comments made about him at the draft, it seems to be highly creative offensive player, great passer, a really good shot, sneaky shot, can get it off fast and a dangerous shot. Needs work on his checking and maybe on his work ethic, which reminds me of probably every forward drafted between 15 and 30 in the NHL draft in the last 20 years ever. Like they say, well, there could be the big Bobby Clobber type, right? Who's the big guy who they're hoping who can skate fast. That's the other kind of forward who's typically drafted then. And Ottawa got a guy like him, right? I think at number 10 this year. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. They took him. But those are the two types of players. But I mean, this is what they would have said about Schremp or probably about Tyler Ennis or about Eberle or about Perron as they're coming out as well. It would have been the exact same scouting report. And we just don't know, is this guy Robbie Schremp or is this guy Jordan Eberle? We don't know.
Yeah, Scott Wheeler in The Athletic had some interesting things to say on them, about him, saying he was Shawinigan's second most productive player in both last two seasons, behind a first-round pick Maverick Bork that you may remember got pushed in last year's draft, and of course a year older than Bourgault, so should be ahead of him. And he says Bourgault's game doesn't leap off the ice at you, but he's dangerous in a variety of ways. I like this part, with a deceptive release that comes off of his blade early in his shooting motion and stance to surprise goalies off of either foot and from awkward positions too. So his shot is, he lets it fly when the goalie's not expecting it. Is basically what he's saying there. He's got and it comes off his stick and early, so more likely to surprise the goalie. So. I mean, I trust Scott Wheeler as a very careful observer of the game. So again, something to watch for. But clearly, he's got the ability to create offense with 40 points in 29 regular season games this year. He was pretty consistent. He was at least a point a game in every month of the season. A little hotter at the end of the year, until then the playoffs. He got 4 points in 5 games. A little bit of a question mark or disappointing finish to the campaign. Of course, it was a short year in the queue. All the players only played 30 odd games.
Yeah, so we'll see how. I mean, he seems like it's always exciting when the Oilers take an attacking forward. Like someone who's just getting it done on the attack, and you can hope he can add to this to the mix sooner than later. Wingers can advance quickly. I mean, much more quickly than other players because their defensive responsibility is less and their defensive reads are much less difficult. So they're able to fit in at the NHL level quicker than other players are if they have that, glittering offensive talent, which can come out at a fairly young age. So we could see this player, we're not going to see him this coming year. But, the year after, probably still unlikely. He'll be in the AHL then, but it could be as quickly as, after this season, we could start seeing him if he really comes on strong. And I think he was invited to Team Canada, if I'm not mistaken. So he will have a chance to make that team. Any final thoughts on him?
They had a big camp. Well, he kind of fits the profile of Oilers. Like, if there was people that thought they should have took the Swedish goalie.
That was a controversy.
There was a big controversy about that. But Bourgault, the Oilers have had an imbalance in their prospect list in the last few years, with more defensemen, sort of a disproportionate number of defensemen and goalies, and relatively few forwards. And they kind of shored that up a bit these last 2 years with Holloway and Bourgault being picked high, and they also got a couple of pretty decent prospects like Lavoie that they got in the second round, and they're a little bit more balanced in terms of having prospects at all positions.
Yeah. So I was mentioning that the people who love the numbers tended to rate him more highly, and so Alan Mitchell, Low Tide, had him the highest of any of the major, public draft raters. He had him ranked 14th overall. So Low Tide must have been happy with that pick, I'm guessing. Or there might have been someone even higher on Low Tide's list still left. I can't recall. And Brad McPherson, who's another person who puts a lot of stock in the numbers, had him ranked 7. Yeah, Bullet Brad had him at 17. Those were the two highest rankings. Mark Seidel, who covers the OHL and all of junior hockey, had him 19th. The lowest ranking was Steve Kornianos, who had him at 46th. But he was pretty solidly, Bruce, in the low 20s, 21, 22, 23, 25, 21, 20, 24. So he was taken kind of exactly where he was expected to take. And, I remember other years when they took Eberle and Yamamoto, where they were taken exactly where they expected to take, and everyone was thinking this, and hey, those worked out. So as irrational as it is, that gives me a little bit of encouragement that this one will work out as well.
All three of them are sort of smallish, right shot, right wingers.
He played center though, Bourgault,
He
and
plays. He's listed as a center, but he played a lot of wing. Is what
played a lot of wing.
yeah.
Bruce, our last player, it is one of my favorite prospects, Dmitry Samorukov. When I look at players who have improved as prospects in the last year, that McLeod certainly near the top of that list, but Samorukov might be at the top of the list. He came out. He was a third-round draft pick, and he slowly worked his way up. He worked his way up in the OHL until he became one of the best, if not the best defenseman in the OHL. And by the time he led his team to the Memorial Cup tournament, he was one of the best, if not the best, young D-man in major junior hockey that year. He was so strong on his skates, big, strong guy, kind of a Mikhail Sergachev. Maybe I'm comparing them because they're both Russians, but the same idea. Big, fast on their skates, strong on their skates, good with the puck, has a physical game. And in his final year playing in the Memorial Cup, he was rushing the puck, shooting the puck, making moves at the blue line, attacking. He looked like a real comer, and then he went to the AHL, Bruce, and he just the wheels fell off in that first year. He just really struggled, which is not at all alarming. This happens again and again and again to young defensemen. We saw it with Caleb Jones and Ethan Bear. They came out of major junior hockey as super solid, excellent major junior hockey players, and then they struggled in their first year in Bakersfield. So it's not a great thing to happen, but it's not a terrible thing to happen with a defenseman. What you're looking for, though, is that next year. What's going to happen in that next year? Can they bounce back? So I'll let you take over at this point. What did we see from him in Moscow this year when he played for CSKA?
Yeah, same question we had for Caleb Jones when he had a tough first year, right? Or for Ryan McLeod, for that matter, that we talked about earlier. And even then, he had maybe a tough first half, and he started coming on as the season went along. So this year, with the AHL season not getting underway, he went to Russia, and he committed to play in Russia for the whole year and not come back to the AHL until the Russian season was over. And then, unfortunately, he got hurt before the end of the Russian season, and that was the end of his season after 48 games. So he played a lot of hockey in the KHL, second best league in the world, with CSKA Moscow, a very good team. His scoring numbers were very pedestrian, 2 goals, 6 assists, but he was plus 24. And that was something we were tracking throughout the year, was that CSKA kept outscoring the other team during Samorokov's part of the game. And I mean, at the end of the season, they were, basically they were a goal ahead for every 2 games that he played. So badly outscoring. They scored 38 and they allowed 14. CSKA during his time, 38 to 14. I mean, and as a team, they were a good team. They were 185 to 121. Well, that's a 3-to-2 ratio. 38 to 14. That's closer to 3-to-1. So he and his partner Klaus Dahlbeck, former NHLer, very good player, and I suspect very good player in the KHL. They were very, very effective. And what I saw of Samorukov in a few games was just a very steady Eddie defenseman. The puck went through his stick and out of the zone. Didn't give up a lot, and he won pucks in the corner and dished it off, and out it went. And I mean, having a good team obviously was a big part of it. But those 2 guys, that pairing, got into very little trouble in the games that I saw. And when the puck did go north, it wasn't like he was jumping up and getting into the play as a fourth attacker or anything. But they would go up, and sometimes they'd score, and usually they'd take the puck a long way from trouble. And it was it's just very kind of low key and just did his part of the big CSKA machine that you and I remember from other eras.
Yeah, it's his style of play, and I'm not saying he's as good as this player, but his style of play kind of reminded me of Kevin Lowe.
Hmm.
Just that very steady game where you get the puck, you stop the attacker with sound fundamental play and a little bit of nastiness if need be. You get the puck and you move the puck, and you do it again and again and again and again. And it's it was particularly important to see that kind of consistent game from him because his reputation, as Sean Patrick Ryan had told us a number of times, the Oil Knight, who writes about prospects in the OHL and in the Oilers farm system, this had been a very inconsistent player in his junior career, and we saw some of that in the AHL. But he gets to Moscow. I don't know if it was the Dahlbeck effect, playing with a veteran like that, who was very strong in the KHL, as you suggest. But there was this metronomic quality to his tick-tock play, just get the puck, pass the puck, get the puck, pass the puck. And um, I really liked it. I really liked his play to the extent when his name came up in trade talks this summer, I got a little
Yeah,
snarly about that, Bruce,
me
down there.
too.
I just thought, what are you doing? You have this guy, and honestly, I'm personally, and this isn't most Oiler fans they're not going to agree. I would have rather seen Ethan Bear and Caleb Jones move out than Samorukov because I think he's got a higher ceiling. Now, is he going to reach that ceiling? I don't know. We'll see. He's got to stay healthy. He got hurt, right? His season ended in a
Yeah,
shoulder injury, and he's got to stay healthy. But because of his size and his skating ability, I think he's got a higher ceiling than either of those players. And the steadiness that I saw also made me think that way. So when he was talking, like, what was it? Was it Ekman Larson had it come up? I think, or no, the goalie was it the goalie out of Arizona?
mhm.
Who was that? He
Antti
went to
Raanta.
Colorado. No, he went to Colorado. The good
Oh,
goalie. Um, Not that Anti-Rantas. He went from Arizona to Colorado. They're
oh, right,
Kemper.
right. Oh,
His
yeah,
name
they
came up in
played.
the Kemper talks, I think, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Well,
Anyway,
then a few times his name came up, but
yeah, yeah. Other teams are smart. They want him.
oh,
Like they had scouts looking at the KHL. They think, hey, if the Oilers don't value this player, let's get him. The good news is I think the Oilers do value him. Now it'll be interesting to see when he goes back to Bakersfield if he's going to play the right or the left side, because
yeah.
he
Oh,
played
right.
on he played on the right side, which is his preferred side apparently, and he looked really super comfortable there. So we'll see because they already have Philip Berryland, they have Michael Kesselring and Phil Kemp. So they got those three guys. There's talk about bringing in a veteran right side guys, but if they didn't, and they also have DeHarnay, isn't is he right shot?
He's a AHL contract, but yeah, he's a great big right shot.
Yeah,
And
so they got
uh,
lots of players there, and you
yeah.
almost
But
hate to see.
Samorukov, I would say he's better than any of those guys you just
Oh yeah,
named.
oh yeah,
So
yeah, I
he
agree.
can do it. Uh, maybe he's Charlie Huddy. He's just as good on the right side as he is on the left. So I know from Sean Patrick Ryan, Oil Knight, his page. I'm just reading a couple of quotes here about Smorkov. Terrific skater, capable of jumping up in the play and creating odd man rushes. Well, he that either was coached out of him in Russia this year, or he was just deciding to work on the defensive aspect of his game because that's what he did. This one, and I've seen some of this, has a nasty physical side where he can be an intimidating defender to play against when he wants to be. And this just in, the Oilers now need such a player, having just lost Adam Larson.
Yeah,
And Samorukov is a guy, and I've seen him step up and deliver a couple of open ice hits that would shiver the timbers of the opposing attacker, and it's not a bad thing to have. Where just every once in a while you close that gap, and you close it in a hurry, and you close down the opponent in no uncertain terms. So that's part of his game. The questions are decision making, consistency, a lot of the typical things that with kids, and the kind of questions that often get asked more about Russian kids than sometimes others too, I think. But
so I don't know how many Bakersfield had a really strong defensive team last year, and in the playoffs they had Theodor Lennstrom, fantastic Swedish hockey player. Um, maybe came over a couple years too late in terms of making it in the NHL. He's back in Sweden. Kevin Gravel they had, who had a couple, played in the NHL for a long time. I don't know if Kevin Gravel's back. I don't think he is, from what I hear. They had Max Gilden. He was a loaned player from another organization, I think from Florida. I don't know if he's back. I don't know why he would be. Like, why are you developing another team's player? Like,
Yeah.
and then they needed a body, which is why they did it last year because of COVID. But don't do that again. That's a really bad
They
idea.
don't need to. They got a lot of bodies now.
And unless they're going to trade for him. And then they had Ryan Stanton, who is probably, he's 31. He was 31 last year. He's probably the steadiest defenseman in the AHL, like in terms of like defensive two-way play. Like he's not a blistering attacker by any means, but man, he's a great AHL defender. I don't know if Stanton's back either, so it'll be interesting to see exactly who their lineup is on the blue line. Let me just see here, Bruce. They got well, I guess Lagesson could end up there if he clears waivers. Philip Broberg's there. Marcus Niemelainen, Kempen Kesselring, and
Maryland.
Berryland.
Over this year.
Yeah, Samorukov.
Samorokov's coming back over. They were talking today. Jay Woodcroft was on Oilers Now, and he was talking about the defensemen that might be there. And he said, "Well, I don't really want to talk about guys that aren't going to make the Oilers because they're all going into camp and their goal is to make the Oilers. So I don't really want to talk about them." But he said, "What I do know is that the Oilers won't be keeping 14 defensemen." And he seemed to be pretty happy with the guys, 9, 10, 11, and so on down that list. And some of these names certainly did come up, and it's a nice set of prospects. As a team, they will miss the Stantons,
Gravel, Landstrom.
But they. In terms of the opportunity for the young bucks, it's maybe that much the better that they're going to see the important minutes of the games. So
yeah, I think this is what the AHL is for. It's not it's nice to win there, but what you're really is all about is developing the players, and we'll see. Lagesson may end up there, Bruce.
Right.
He could clear waivers. It's wouldn't be impossible. I'd say it's like a coin flip. Depends if a team needs a defenseman and the timing of the waiving and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, at the end of camp, there's a lot of guys that get waived, and sometimes some pretty good players get through because every team's got guys on the cusp, right?
Yeah.
But Jay Woodcroft, he did address that today. He talked about, he said, my first objective is to develop players for the Edmonton Oilers, but he said that's not mutually exclusive from winning. And I'm saying to my radio, yeah, especially if you're trying to develop winners, it's great that they're, I don't want to have a team that, finishes in last place because it's a bunch of overwhelmed kids. You want to have a team environment where it sets the standard for what they're going to do next. So they talked about that environment, and between those veteran defensemen, they had some veteran forwards like Adam Cracknell and Seth Griffith and so on that helped out. And they also showed the way a little bit to Oilers youngsters. Ryan Holt.
Lavoie played with Cracky.
Lavoie played with Cracknell, yeah. Ryan Holt, the Condors announcer, he was on Oilers Now last week talking about how he thought Cracknell had shown Lavoie a thing or two as line mates, both big forwards, not necessarily great skaters, but right hand shots like that. They actually have some things in common, and so having older players show those younger guys the ropes, there's a lot to be said for that. So
some big boys on that farm team. Kesselring, huge. Kemp is big. Niemelainen's massive. Philip Broberry's big player. Lagesson would be the smallest of the three of those guys. And then Samorukov's Deharnay's giant, and Samorukov's a giant. So the big boys brigade is on the way.
Samorukov officially 6'2", 198. So just big, but he's not like huge.
Monster big. No.
He's big enough.
He is.
He's Kevin Lowe size at 6'2", 198. There you go. So that was your comp.
Not really, just a style reminiscent of. I don't want to say he's a comp because that's a bit much to say at this point. Although at junior hockey, Samorukov had as much, Kevin Lowe had great success as a major junior hockey player. So did Samorukov. So it's maybe not that maybe not that insane. All right, Bruce. Anything else? Are we done? Ready to moving up?
Well, yeah, we're getting near the top. We're going to have 3 more players after these 3, and we'll be finished our prospect series and not much more in the week's time from this is Monday afternoon and August. That will be wrapping up the prospects, but the actual rookie camp's set to start here in a couple weeks, mid-September. So it's coming fast. And for now, they're holidaying fast, and we're not really getting any news, but we're probably going to get a PTO or 2, and clearly a Yamamoto breakthrough of some description has to happen. It's unfortunately time is ticking by, and he's left kind of dangling in the wind a little bit. That's one I wish they had put to bed.
Yeah, I hope he signs. It's interesting because there is competition coming up for Kailer Yamamoto. Not right this year, but by next year, right? You get Lavoie ready and players like that, and Dylan Holloway's coming on strong, and Bourgault's on the way. So he'd be wise, I think, to sign a 2 or 3 year deal if he can get that. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, he takes it. Honestly, just Oiler friendly contract. That's what I'm hoping to see on this one, Bruce, because the Oilers do have the hammer in terms of negotiation. And he is a player who's been inconsistent. So 2 year deal at a reasonable rate is what I would hope to see. All right, let's leave it there. Thanks for talking.
Right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.